Yahuwah's covenant calendar removes the rubble of tradition. Some background information. Many calendars want to claim the title of the one and only true Torah calendar. What are the prerequisites? There's only one calendar will be in total compliance with every text of the gospel account, especially the Passion Week. Only one calendar will be able to satisfy the gospel requirements of a 12-hour offset between 1, the blood-ratified covenant calendar that Yahusha was honoring, and 2, the solar lunar calendar of the unbelieving Jews. There's 2 types of Jews in that day as recorded in the scriptures. Some were believing and some were not. Do you know the difference? How does anyone achieve such a feat as to find this very exact calendar year that will satisfy every requirement? We have another study. It's a detailed study. We went through 8 calendars in it. Common Era 26 to 29, 31 to 34. Each one of those calendars was easily disqualified. Why? Because number one, not even 1 year contained a lunar calendar Passover following the covenant calendar Passover. And yes, it will need the essential 12-hour offset. Why does it need that? Because as written in Matthew 26:5 and John 19:42, that 12-hour offset is an integral part of the Passover that Yahusha was crucified on. If it does not have that 12-hour offset, it was the wrong Messiah that was being crucified. Is it accurate? Extremely. Not even 1 year could satisfy the age of Yahusha as our Passover sacrifice according to the gospel requirements. Not one. So for further information, see Yahusha at age 12. Was he lost or was he discovered? You decide. Have a look at that link. Is this an absurd claim? What makes Common Era year of the Crucifixion so incredibly and blindingly brilliant that it cannot be mistaken? Is it really that clear? Absolutely. But first, what is a 12-hour offset? Have you heard of that 12-hour offset in the Passover before? Visualizing the 12-hour offset. The 12-hour offset at Yahusha's Passover is found only on the 4th cycle, or the 4th day of the week, and that would be Wednesday in common terminology. Why on the 4th cycle? Because according to Daniel 9:27, Passover must be found on a 4th cycle. That is the midst of the week. Covenant calendar begins the day with dawn twilight over here. The solar lunar calendar begins its day 12 hours later over here at sunset. That 12-hour offset will be established right at this spot. In this fuchsia oval, there is 2 verses that identify this timing right here with precision. How can we be sure about this offset? Yahusha must lay down his life on his appointed Passover day to qualify as the true Mashiach. Remember, many priests, scribes, and elders met with the high priest Caiaphas to seize Yahusha by trickery and kill him. But there was one condition, one major condition. Where is that? Matthew 26:5. But they said, not at the festival, lest there be an uproar among the people. And yes, it is a major puzzle piece in the calendar. Major. If we've looked at this verse and we've just read over it without much thought, it's time to stop and read those words again. Not at the festival. What did the Jews of the day mean by that term? Not at their festival. In other words, not Passover or the unleavened bread festival of the unbelieving Jews. Do you remember me saying that there was believing Jews also? Well, yes, this Passover was of the unbelieving Jews. Remember, Yahusha, the lamb of the first year, must be the sacrifice on only his Passover. There is no other way. When Yahusha was still hanging on the tree, the date of the month according to their lunar calendar was still Abib 13, and it stayed that way right up until when? Until sunset. The lunar Abib 13 was not at their festival. Interesting words. Read again, Matthew 26:5. Does anyone or any calendar that you know of dare to make such a claim? Yes, a claim like that can be made because of John 19:14 and 42. In John 19:14 and 42, he details in verse 14, Yahusha's Passover day began at dawn. Time to remember. Joseph and Nicodemus were burying Yahusha according to the custom of the Jews. Yahusha was laid in the tomb just before the high Shabbat of unleavened bread began to dawn, that is, to grow light, or epiphosko. Pay attention to this next verse, for it is important. John 19:42. There, then, because of the preparation of who? The preparation of the Yahudim, they laid Yahusha because the tomb was near. Note that terminology. It's not there by mistake. John fully intentionally wrote that. Preparation of the Yahudim. He was separating and distancing it for a purpose. Yahusha's covenant calendar beginning at dawn over here in the red mark. At this time, Yahusha's Passover day was half over. The unbelieving Jews' lunar calendar was beginning at sunset right here. The Jews' Passover day was just beginning. What about this 12 hours here? Do take note of that 12-hour offset. This is the covenant calendar, and this is the lunisolar calendar of the Jews. We are not going to run through 8 calendars on this study. However, we will examine the 2 most popular years for the crucifixion. Will we find a key to discover the 12-hour offset? This study will compare several types of calendars for the placement of Abib 14 around the Tekufa. Number 1, the covenant calendar dates on the first day after the Tekufa. Number 2, the lunar-based dates before the Tekufa, that is, the sliver before the Tekufa. Number 3, the lunar-based dates with the sliver after the Tekufa. Please note, the scriptures reveal that the new year always begins the day after the Tekufa, even though some ministries teach that the new year begins on the day of the Tekufa. These comparisons were noted in the detailed study to ensure every option has been considered to eliminate being off by a 1-day count. Where will this study begin? The Passover dating of Abib 14 on covenant calendar will be shown first for both Common Era 28 and Common Era 31. Next to be considered are the 2 lunar Abib 14 Passover dates as placed on the Gregorian calendar. The 2 lunar dates? Yes, the sliver before and the sliver after the Tekufa. Third is to look for the scriptural 12-hour offset. Is it scriptural? Is it written in the scriptures? Is there actually verses that describe that? Yes, there is. And we're going to look for those around Passover as a result of the Jewish sunset day start. Number 4 is finding the lunar Abib 14 Passover on the 5th cycle to be 1 Gregorian cycle following the covenant calendar Abib 14 Passover. When? On the 4th cycle, the midst of the week. So why would that 5th cycle need to be following? Look at that bottom one there in the pink. Remember, the Gregorian date will, according to the Talmud, start with the previous sunset. This is a little key that we cannot forget. The requirements for the comparison of calendars. According to serious study with covenant calendar, we have ascertained that the historic documentation by Julian Morgenstern declares the Jews were using the crescent moon before the Tekufa, and we have verified that. This is the case for the calendar study of Yahusha's 12th year Passover, when he was discovered in the temple 3 days after what? After the Jewish Passover. Why was he there? What was he doing? Is there a statute that supports him? Or was he supporting the statute? Therefore, we will follow the unbelieving Jews' lunar-based calendar for Passover patterns and calculations during this time frame. The Tekufas have been carefully chosen according to accurate charts, which is documented in the detailed study. In each year, we are seeking for a Passover on the midst of the week, Wednesday in common terminology. Why? To satisfy the requirements of Daniel 9:27, when the sacrifices and oblations were to cease forever. So let's have a look at Common Era 28 first. And according to the covenant, we're going to be looking for Yahusha's crucifixion on a fourth cycle. Here is the Tekufa. You'll see the date right here. We come over here, the box is over the 22. Look at these green lines. Count the numbers above these green lines. That is your 14 cycle count to Abib 14. This is covenant calendar Abib 14 on the first cycle of the week. Sorry, on the second cycle of the week. So we're going to see if we can find a matching luni solar calendar that will give us a 12-hour offset. But on this one, according to covenant calendar, please note Common Era 28, covenant calendar Abib 14 on a second cycle of the week. It is not a midst of the week, not in Common Era 28. No fourth cycle crucifixion this year. Common Era 28. Number one, the lunar sliver view before the Tekufa. There's your conjunction. It's marked out as the 15th. So we've marked it for the 15th up here. Here's your sliver moon on the 17th. Then comes new moon's day. Count out 14 days. From new moon's day, there are 14 cycles to the 31st, a lunar fourth cycle Passover. But hang on. That 14th began on the third cycle over here by default of the sunset to sunset belief structure of the Jews. So it is this date here where we would be looking for the 12-hour offset, but we're not going to find it here. This exposes another complete lunar failure with no alignment of a 12-hour offset between the two calendars, as documented in Matthew 26:5 and also as written even clearer in John 19:42. So I ask you, how do you get a 12-hour offset from the 31st of March over to the 5th of April? A 12-hour offset cannot happen. And that is what is written in the scriptures that eliminates this possibility. What about the next one? Number two, this is the lunar sliver view after the Tekufa. And yes, it is the late factor. Here we see the conjunction on the 13th. Up comes the sliver moon. And look at the proximity to this Passover of the covenant calendar. But let's keep going. This sliver moon follows the conjunction, not as the normal 2 days later. The charts tell us it is 1 day after, but we're going to go with it because that's what's on the charts. Here comes your new moon's day. Count out 14 days down to the 28th right here. 14 cycles to the 28th, the lunar fourth cycle Passover. See this? Fourth cycle Passover, which also began at sunset, the cycle before, when? On the third cycle of the week. That makes it an impossibility to have a 12-hour offset. Common Era 28 is a very popular year for the lunar crucifixion, using a very late date. And what about Scripture's 12-hour offset? Not even possible. So, is there any alignment with the scriptures in Common Era 28? No, there's not. Common Era 28 summary. Both lunar options have Passover on a fourth cycle, and both would have started at the sunset prior on the third cycle. Note the following comparisons. Number one, the lunar conjunction before the Tekufa. The lunar Passover on March 31, the fourth cycle, is 4 to 5 cycles apart from the covenant calendar Passover on April 5th, the second cycle. Number two, lunar conjunction after the Tekufa. Well, there's 23 to 24 cycles apart from the covenant calendar Passover, and that's on April 5th, a second cycle. We're having troubles getting alignment. Common Era 28. In considering 3 different Passover timing scenarios, it is once again what? Impossible to reckon them with the scriptural 12-hour offset as written in John 19:42 and Matthew 26:5. Is it becoming clear that 12-hour offset is important? Well, it is written in the scriptures. Common Era 28 is a very popular year for the fourth cycle crucifixion, according to lunar calendars. Did you notice that both the lunar calculations claim a fourth cycle, Abib 14 Passover, on March 31 and April 28th? Yet still, even with the 2 fourth cycle calculations, Common Era 28 cannot find alignment with the scriptures' 12-hour offset. What about Common Era 31? Will it prove to be any better? What about that 12-hour festival offset? Will we find it here? On your right, top right-hand corner, we're going to look here. The covenant calendar, Abib 14 Passover. The 14th was on a 6th cycle in this year. Here's your Tekufa right here. This is your first lunar view. Here's your conjunction. It's recorded right here, so we mark it out. There's a conjunction. Here comes the sliver moon. Here comes your new moon's day, and we count out 14 days to the 28th of March. That's where the lunar Passover is on a 4th cycle. Remember, that's counted out as Gregorian. But what happens according to the Talmud, according to the Jewish lunisolar calendar? That date, the 4th cycle, would start at sunset of the 3rd cycle the evening before. So what just happened to your 4th cycle crucifixion with a 12-hour offset? Did it fly out the window? See how close the lunar Passover was to the Tekufa? It's only 5 cycles away. Just from here, 5 cycles. Covenant calendar Passover was 9 more cycles in the future. Again, no possibility of a 12-hour offset. It just cannot happen in this 31. What about the second lunar view, which is the sliver after the equinox? Again, over here, here's your conjunction as marked out right here. Here's your sliver moon. In comes the new moon's day. Count out 14 cycles down to the 26th. From new moon's day, there are 14 cycles to the 26th, a lunar Passover on a 5th cycle that starts at sunset of the 4th cycle the evening before. Wait a minute, this starts on a 4th cycle? What's the problem with this 4th cycle? Well, it's a long ways from the 6th. It's a long ways from right here. There's no possibility of a 12-hour offset. Can't happen. If you can't match every text in the scriptures, then you need to look elsewhere. And we are not going to be claiming 31 as the year of the crucifixion. Using the lunar Passover after the Tekufa moves the lunar Passover almost 3 weeks later. There is absolutely no possibility of the 12-hour festal offset in this one. Next, Charlene, comes the summary chart. Can you please help me out here?
So this is a summary slide for all of the detail that was found in part 1 of the full study. And we're including this information for you to ponder, and note that all the 8 years are going to be on this chart. I just want you to be able to question what was going on so that you can challenge if there was a 12-hour offset anywhere. And as as mentioned, this is just a short study today that we're addressing only Common Era 28 and 31. Those are the two most popular years that have been selected for Yahusha's Passover year. So in the first column of the table is the summary for the covenant calendar calculations. It's so easy to note that there is no fourth cycle Passover in either Common Era 28 or Common Era 31. But as you quickly run your eyes down the column, you're going to find that there is no fourth cycle Passover under the guideline of covenant calendar calculation for any of the years, not one. Does that seem interesting or unusual to you? That's for the covenant calendar, the blue column. Now for the rest of the chart is just a partial summary for these other two lunar calendars that we've discussed today, looking for that 12-hour offset. And we know that you've been watching for this as well. In the green column, it has summary details for the Passover date through using the lunar calculations before the equinox. And the teal column has the summary for all of the 8 years for the Passover date, so through using the lunar calculations, and that is after the equinox. And you can see that there's 2 spots there that we left open for homework. But now we're going to look at a red box that's coming up. For today, we're going to focus on only years 28 and 31. Year 28 is a very interesting year. Tim is going to show you what's happening there between the Passover days of the week, okay? The calendar of the unbelieving Jews during the time of Yahusha's 12-year Passover was using the sliver moon count before the equinox. However, this is not the case by the time Yahusha arrived on the scene with his ministry. These Jews had exchanged their lunar count to begin after the equinox. Remember what he said in John 7? Your time is always ready. So that middle column, the green one, is showing you a calculation with the sliver moon before the equinox, and you have a Wednesday Passover on March the 31. But at Yahusha's time, he has a Wednesday Passover with the lunar after the equinox. So we find it really interesting what's happening here. Now we're going to look at the blue box, but only the 2 columns this time. In covenant calendar CE 31 being the popular year for Yahusha's Passover, but as you can see, it's lagging a little bit behind. Year 31 in covenant calendar is a Friday, okay? It is after the lunar calculation of the Wednesday on March 28th. Now, here's what I want to tell you. There are many religions, churches, and denominations, including Rome, that teach a Friday cross. And many or most of them say that this Friday cross happened in 31. Oh, really? Did it? There's a couple of reasons why we need to question this. You know why? Because most people at this, believing this, promote a 3.5-year ministry of Yahusha that starts in covenant Common Era 27 when he's 30 years old. So if you add 3.5 years to that, you're going to get to year 31, which would put him at 33 years old for his Passover. It's a very interesting number. However, that reasoning and calculation disqualifies Yahusha as the true Messiah, as he is not to be more than a 1-year lamb, okay? That's all he was, a lamb of the first year. So there's lots of problems there when the Torah is not followed for every type and antitype, but that's not all. The most interesting item about this summary chart is that the covenant calendar has a Friday Passover. Look at that in that blue box. There is a Friday Passover, but it's on covenant calendar calculation. It's not on a Wednesday. So those that are claiming the lunar moon, okay, the moon setting out when to set your festal dates in year 31, you will not find a Friday crucifixion in 31 using a lunar calculation. Very interesting what you'll see on a chart. So build charts because they always have you look at a lot of extra things. Okay, we're going to go down into this bronze box. Now, we didn't do year 33, but I want you to see what's happening here. When you go to the big study, you can pick everything out because there's a very interesting twist here. Can you see what the twist is? We have both of the lunars calculations are exactly the same. This is because the new moon day was on the equinox. It was not before and it was not after. So that's why both of these calculations are exactly the same. Do you see April 4? Really close to covenant calculations. Covenant calendar is 1 day off. Do you think we have a 12-hour offset here? Well, no, not really, because their Sabbath starts on Friday night and it ends on Saturday night at the sunset. But the Sunday Passover in Common Era 33 doesn't start for 12 hours later. So we're looking for an offset where these two calendars are sharing the same 12 hours together. And this one doesn't work at all. There's just lots of interesting things that are happening there. So we've got one more line at the bottom of this box. Remember, when you're doing your study, that there is not going to be one single year that has a covenant calendar 12-hour offset. Tim, if you can bring up that last line, there we go. Not one year could produce this 12-hour offset on the fourth cycle, on the midst of the week. Out of these 8 years, we did not cover year 30. Then we checked out everything that we could on these 8 years and we just didn't find a single thing. So Tim, I want you to go to the next slide and show us what we're up for.
Your questions deserve answers. All of the documentation for the other 6 years of calendar are given great attention at the study link below. Check it out for yourself and be ready for part 2 and what happens in when? In Common Era 30. That is a very, very special year. What you're going to see there is absolutely phenomenal. And if you want to check it out at this website link here, the studythecalendar.com, Yahusha's Crucifixion Year, Part 1. That's the full edition, and it is great. That ends the short version for Part 1. And this will be continued in Part 2, where a very careful and detailed examination will be given to Common Era 30. And I really hope that this will perk up your curiosity. Yahuwah marks the sands of time. Question and comments can be sent to me at questions@studythecalendar.com or www.studythecalendar.com. And please don't be afraid to connect Charlene with that also. She's very good with the answers too. Thank you for your time. Greatly appreciated. Hope you enjoyed it. Shalom.